And welcome back, everybody, to another edition here of the Men of Steel podcast. Me, Charles, Prodigy, Richey. And I have been back here, and a lot of people, I'm sure, have been wondering where I've been at. I've been just taking a little bit of time off for the last 2 weeks. So glad to be back here on the Men of Steel podcast. You can catch me every Mondays and Wednesdays. First off, before I get into this podcast, I just want to say thank you to my last guest, Billy Hillgrove. It was an honor and a pleasure having him on a couple of weeks ago. As right now, just like I said, had a lot of stuff to get cleared away. So getting ready to resume regular activity here. So always keep you here at this time at 6:30. And if a lot of people just been wondering, I just apologize for not being available recently. But like I said, I am back right now and just ready to get back to rolling things as we always keep it here. As we are in OTAs right now, still a lot of questions to still be asked coming up as we take a look at things coming up. One of the things that's definitely going to be an interesting note, we got two guys that are standing out there right now, as a matter of fact. I'm talking about none other than kicker Chris Boswell and, of course, defensive back Mike Hilton right now, who may be playing for their play for pay, if you will, so to speak, at this point in time. It's definitely been one of the things where you look at, especially like a guy like Chris Boswell, which, by the way, when you look at his first three seasons in Pittsburgh, when he came in 2015 during that kicking mess after they lost Sean Schweizum in the preseason in the Hall of Fame game that weekend where Jerome Bettis went into the Hall. Remember, he had a couple of kickers before then at that point in time where they just were not getting anything rolling to start off that year. It was definitely a big, huge blow, as a lot of people could relate that year. And a lot of people, when you look at the year that Chris Boswell had last year, it almost kind of reminds you of the 2015 team, but the only difference was they were still able to get into the playoffs as a wild card and missing out on the division largely in part two with Le'Veon Bell, who was definitely at that time as controversial and character flaws he had. When he was on there with a guy like Antonio Brown, you saw the production, what they're able to deliver on the field on a night-in, night basis. It was still a huge factor at all in that when you look at it. Because remember, you start off the season in 2015, like I mentioned, with Josh Scobie, who was supposed to be a noble replacement. He was struggling mightily that year. When you look at it, I mean, Josh Scobie in that year for the Steelers, when you look at how he performed, overall, he was 6 of 10 for field goals and only missed one extra point attempt that year. But then you also had another guy, too, who eventually went to the Bengals. I think about like following the next season. And when we look at that guy, who that was in that season, before then, trying to pull up his name right now, as a matter of fact, for that season, but that was also a nightmare too. And you look at it, I mean, this is shortly before Chris Boswell was coming on the team. And the other guy that they had on there after Josh Scobie in that year, that was about it, excuse me. So yeah, it was just one kicker. There was just one guy in the regular season. But I mean, look at a guy like Chris Boswell. I know a lot of people were definitely agitated how he did last year. And I don't blame a lot of Steelers fans for being upset. I mean, definitely, he was definitely not the main reason, but definitely a big chunk of the reason why they didn't make the playoffs last year. You think about where, if not for that tie against Cleveland Browns, would they have still been in the playoffs in that year? I mean, it was definitely one thing where you look at it and how much emphasis. And remember, too, back this year in March, when they were looking at things, and he definitely had to hold off on, I think it was like a $1 million signing bonus. Let's take a look at it here. When you looked at it, he was being due about $3 million total for his contract this year, but they wanted to convince him to wait out up until like about week 15 at the latest and see how he does after that. But yeah, I think right there for a guy like for Chris Boswell, excuse me, who was definitely once considered a long-time savior of the Steelers. And when you think about how many game-winning kicks he was making the first 3 years, I mean, one game that maybe stood out in my memory as far as like his overall career, I definitely have to think back to that Bengals game back in 2016. That was one game where they were trailing, I want to say, like about 14, 17 points in that contest. And little by little, they kept chipping away. And eventually, what ended up happening? They actually ended up winning that contest in that game. That was a crucial, at that point in time, it was a Week 15 matchup that the Steelers had. And let's go back and revisit that game, shall we? And by the way, like I said, so he definitely had it where in that game it was like about it was about a 14-point deficit and just kept chipping away. They found up winning the game by 4 points late in the game, and thanks to Ben Roethlisberger finding Eli Rogers in the end zone for the touchdown, and that was the game winner right there. So, what happened to a guy like Chris Boswell? How did he end up doing? Well, like I said, you look at the statistics this year, 85. No, I mean, this year he went 13 for 20 in field goals. And then he went 43 of 48 in extra point attempts. If you guys want to feel free and dial in the number here for the show, it's 312-209-2232. Again, that's 312-209-2232. You can also follow me on Twitter at Prodigy Richey. And then you can also check me out on Instagram, Metasteel Nation. And then you can also check me out on my YouTube channel, Metasteel Podcast. Like I said, again, that's Mondays and Wednesdays. And just once again, just want to apologize to folks not being around the last few weeks. Like I said, I had a lot to take care of, but definitely am back. Just keep an eye on things. And then, like I said, aside from Chris Boswell, let's take a look at another guys. And I want you guys feel free to like, share, or let me your comments right now as we continue things on. Mike Hilton right now. Mike Hilton, I think, definitely is going to be another concern for the Steelers' priorities when you think about it. And when we look at it and see where he's got to go and how he's maintain some stuff. I think a guy like Mike Hilton, when you look at things, he's definitely been one of the most valuable and reliable guys who's been shutting down some key passes, especially being broken up or whatever. I mean, he was a guy who was eventually making the team in the 2017 season. Did a whale of a job doing some impressive stuff. And I remember game against the Giants and what he was doing, and look at what happened. He's the guy who's definitely shared his contributing role when you look at it. And I mean, face it. I mean, I know you got some guys right here when you look at the overall depth chart. I mean, that's one thing the Steelers got staring them in the face is somewhat their suspect secondary. But now that you got a guy like Joe Hayden in the lineup right now, and when you really think about it, I think right now when you look at it, I mean, Joe Hayden, who's going into the last year of his contract, and then that's about it. But then when you also consider who the Steelers were able to sign away from the Chiefs, Steven Nelson, I mean, when you really look at it, I mean, who's coming into this year with a 3-year, $25.5 million contract, who, by the way, I mean, let's see how much of a mentor he could be to this team. I think he's definitely going to be an interesting piece, the pair opposite side of Hayden. I mean, he's entering his 5th year. Definitely did a lot of stuff. But like I said, the only red flag I'm waving at a guy like Steven Nelson, even though he is from an Andy Reid defense, is like how the Chiefs defense did last year. I think one thing that's just be etched in my mind is how they did in that AFC Championship game, Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, let's pause and think about that for a second. I mean, yeah, he's definitely had a heck of a career going on, and Andy Reid is definitely known for his defense, but I definitely feel like you got to be a little bit careful where you look at it right here and see what's he going to do on this defense right now. And I got to believe and wonder what kind of adjustments Terrell Austin is going to make for this team. So those are one things to keep in mind. But when you look at overall too, I mean, for a guy like Mike Hilton, who's got 1 year left on his deal, and he's got like $645,000 that expires after this season. So that's definitely going to be one thing to keep an eye on. Obviously, still under, I think, like a rookie contract in some way. Not really, but when you look at it, too, I mean, this guy here went undrafted. The Steelers usually do decent jobs of finding some guys, even if they're not going to find someone in the draft. But I do think right now what you got to really look at with Mike Hilton, I think he can still be a valuable piece to this defense if they're going to continue to move forward, what kind of success they're going to have overall. I definitely feel like he's a guy that could still come in there on those second and third down situations, make some plays, and keep up. I mean, that's all you want to ask for. The only problem is, though, when you think about like Mike Hilton, like what he's contributed so far, can he be convincing enough if he's going to get a contract extension for the next foreseeable season, for the next 3 years plus? Can he eventually be a contributing factor why this team will play defense, sideline coverage? And the only biggest flaws I'm having with the Steelers' defense so far, hardly any pick sixes. And if you look at the pick sixes that happened last year, I think they had like about 2 or 3 of them. They were in short yardage situations where you had your opponent's offense being pinned deep where they had to march a little bit. So you're catching guys like around the inside like the 20 around average times. I just think right now, like I've been stating before, and my opinion, where I like to see this defense get to the next step as far as like continue the improvement with this youth. I think you have to look at is where they got to be quick and efficient, and that I think that's got to be key. You can't be playing any more 3-and-out defenses, in my opinion. I mean, that's been pretty much good style. And more, how much has it been? Have they been too blitz heavy on the quarterback? I mean, that's another question I think a lot of people forget. I mean, when you also look at the defense, too. This was also going to be one of the first years that Joey Porter ain't going to be on the defense this year for the first time since 2015. I mean, think about that for a second. Joey Porter, in my opinion, who definitely took a struggling Dick LeBeau blitz defense and a downhill defense, and he was trying to turn things around. Don't get me wrong, but in his career, I mean, when you really think about things, think about what he's done. I mean, he came in there, I mean, not 2015, excuse me, 2014, where he served as defensive assistant under Dick LeBeau, and then was promoted to outside linebackers coach in 2015. I mean, if we're going to be talking about like the absence of a Mike Munchak, how much are you Steeler Nation concerned without the presence of Joey Porter no longer being there? I got the number to hit up is 312-209-2232. Again, that's 312-209-2232. You can also follow me on Twitter at Prodigy Richey, as well as Instagram, Men of Steel Nation, and Men of Steel Podcast. So I think those are things, a little bit of give and take as this season continues to progress. And the off season, some questions you want to like answer right there. You want to find some stuff on. And another thing I did not mention in this preview here, as we're doing today's show, the quarterback competition behind Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, right now as it stands, you do got Joshua Dobbs as your number 2 quarterback, along with Mason Rudolph. And I got to be honest here, Joshua Dobbs didn't look all that bad last year in the preseason when you look at things. I mean, he definitely opened some eyes and was able to do some nice scrambling. I think his passing got better. But definitely, I think this preseason is definitely going to be a big-time battle for who's going to be that legitimate number 2 guy behind Ben Roethlisberger. Who's going to be the guy like holding up the playbook and coming in at times as something, God forbid, happened to Ben. I think that's definitely one thing people need to be aware of, how much emphasis that's going to be. And I'm liking the way the Steelers, they've been methodically preparing for this. I mean, the last few seasons. Of course, not so much this year in the draft, since they already signed him to this 2-year extension, a couple of days before the draft, and he finally got everything going. But still got to believe he's got to be one of the key guys that holds this glue together for this team. I mean, like it or not, I mean, speaking of Joey Porter earlier, who's definitely a guy who's one of the guys who called out Ben Roethlisberger as far as like how he was using his leadership power and pretty much felt like he was using it for like himself, which could be argued. Don't forget, he was also a former teammate of Ben Roethlisberger when they won that fifth Super Bowl in 2005. He's definitely been one of the more critical guys since moving on from the Steelers. And once again, since his post-coaching career as a defensive coach with the Steelers. So that's one thing right there. I think Ben Roethlisberger, I mean, Skip Bayless still believes that Ben Roethlisberger is going to be at least an MVP candidate. But aside from that, too, I don't know if everyone got to check out Kurt Warner, who was naming his top 5 quarterbacks for the 2019 season. And it was really interesting how he thought of Ben Roethlisberger when he looked at it. And he put him definitely right up there in the category with Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, and Ben Roethlisberger. I thought that was very complimentary of him. I mean, a lot of people still seem to give Ben Roethlisberger the pass that he's been a Super Bowl champion 2 times. Obviously, both those times had a lot of help from a dominating defense. But the one that he did do better in was the second one, was in Super Bowl 43, where he had that game-winning drive. It was definitely consistent throughout. Threw for almost 250 yards in that game. But Santonio Holmes was the guy who got the MVP. And you got to believe right now, is Ben Roethlisberger really starting to wake up and accept the criticism? I know last Monday, he kind of put his foot in his mouth a little bit away by all of a sudden coming out in public and acknowledging like how he felt bad, how he was part of the breakup of a guy like Antonio Brown, how his leadership could have been handled better. My thoughts on that, I would say, I'm not saying that Ben Roethlisberger didn't try to reach out to guys like Le'Veon Bell or Antonio Brown, but especially Antonio Brown. But yeah, a lot of opportunities to hush the silence to a lot of people. You could clear your name out a long time ago. I mean, after the season. I mean, I didn't hear any reports after then that he was trying to do everything he can to not let him go. And I'm not saying that he wasn't, but it looks a little suspect in a way. But he wanted to just silence the outside noise, concentrate on his family, give him a little bit of time to rest, which I understand. But at the same time, too, I think it looks a little sad and a little mystifying at times. What are you really saying about who comes on at this point in time? I gotta feel right now that Ben Roethlisberger, I gotta believe he's gotta be better than ever. But let me just say this. There's still a lot of times we're going to have to test patience with a guy like a Juju Smith-Schuster. He's been consistent as a backup role to an Antonio Brown, taking pressure off him and stepping up when needed upon. And don't get me wrong, I feel like he's done a lot of stuff. The problem is we don't really truly know how he's going to be as that number one guy. And the reason why I point to that, I mean, you got to realistically put things in perspective here. Look, and I feel right now as we get into Vance McDonald, who's having maintained his position, that the Steelers will have better offensive production without Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown. With that in mind, right now he believes it's all about 11 guys on the field doing their job and doing it effectively. But then you had Bucky Brooks of NFL.com saying this, who actually believes that they will be better off offensively. End quote. With that in mind, I believe the Steelers were wise to cut their losses and move on behind a young nucleus of players with the collective talent to excel in leading roles. Harris and Smith-Schuster has shown they deliver enough production to keep the offense rolling. And it certainly doesn't have a 2-time Super Bowl winner who continues to play at a high level at quarterback. It doesn't hurt to have a 2-time Super Bowl winner. Excuse me. That may be true. But again, I believe right now with the Steelers and what they did. I mean, take a look at. I mean, like this game, like in their final game against the Bengals. I mean, let's put things in perspective here. I mean, when you look at it, Smith-Schuster had only 5 grabs for 37 yards with a touchdown. I mean, granted, it's a little bit more intense. You already pretty much played a whole season, but at the same time, too, you're also playing a pretty good defense who knows them well historically in the Bengals. And of course, being AFC North football. But I mean, I hate to say it. I believe Juju Smith-Schuster. I believe he will excel. But let's not forget that small little sample size for right now. 5 catches for 37 yards. That is a concern. I mean, averaging barely over 7 yards in that game. I mean, it's really hard to determine and pinpoint where that's going to take them at that point. I feel the only true way you're going to know is how Juju Smith-Schuster does this year. You got to get him back to the playoffs. I mean, if not this year, the following year. I mean, you definitely got a lot of stuff on your plate right now. I'm not saying he doesn't got the will or the want to be that next productive performer. I think he will, but let's just hold a little bit of caution right here. I think it's definitely going to put a little bit more extra motivation on a guy like James Washington, who was actually quoting last week that he realized at the end of the day and learned from his coaching, he wasn't in enough physical peak top position shape. He needed to lose more weight and run a little bit more quicker. He thought he was ready, but this year he's going to the obviously, of course, like more diet and more of a better work ethic. And he was slow in his route running at times. So James Washington, I'm definitely be interested to see. I mean, when you think back to like what I said a few moments ago with the quarterback competition, Josh Dobbs, I think he's going to be a real interesting one. But I would not be surprised if Josh Dobbs maintains the number 2 quarterback role once again this preseason. I think Mason Rudolph, if anything, I think probably 2020 will be his year where he moves up further. Don't get me wrong, the kid's got a good arm. Coming from Oklahoma State. Of course, James Washington being one of his Barry mates. But I gotta see much more. We're gonna find that out shortly. So like I said, if you guys got any questions, again, the number to hit up is 312-209-2232. Again, it's 312-209-2232. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Prodigy Richey. Now let's get some more good stuff coming up over here. And of course, Devin Bush right here. How much is expected to be of him coming up this season? And I know one of the things he's definitely doing is studying the playbook. I gotta imagine he's gonna be having one of the headsets in his helmet be helpful in controlling the defense. But he'll be turning 21 this July 18th. Now let's take a look at some of the history. I thought there was like a nice little article here that was written by Stephen J. Nesbitt of The Athletic. And with his dad, he said, with his father, Devin Bush Sr., he said, he won't lie to you about your odds. And Devin Bush Jr., talk about his father. As a guy that watched me develop as a football player from the beginning, and a guy that coached football, the guy that played it was a first-round pick, played in the league for years. He's seen people come and go. His dad definitely showed him a lot of tough love throughout the years. I was real upfront with him. It definitely was one of Devin Bush Jr.'s rocks as far as mentoring him. And just as far as like where he needed to be in his career. Don't forget, he also ruined with Derek Brooks in college at Florida State, who's actually his godfather, by the way. I mean, which is a cool thing to know about Devin Bush, which a lot of people found out. And that's a good connection for, of course, like a guy like Mike Tomlin, who was also once upon a time an assistant coach for a few years with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, with Tony Dungy's staff, and of course John Gruden when they won the Super Bowl. Well, of course, there was definitely a lot of ties in that. Devin Bush Sr. was also close with Joey Porter and Lathon Flowers. He was coached by defensive coordinator Keith Butler in Cleveland. Senior was, and also interned at Steelers training camp last fall. Look at all that stuff going on. And I think for a guy like Devin Bush, I think my expectations for him, I think he's going to do just fine. But again, I'm going to definitely caution a lot of people. I'm going to see him be a little bit more chipping away at that point in time. I think for anything what he's going to do where they continue to do anything, he's definitely going to have to learn a lot in his game. When you got a guy like Mark Barron, who's on the team, I think he's going to slowly do it out with him in the preseason, of course. Maybe Mark Barron will probably get the nod briefly for a little bit. Then you'll see Devin Bush come in there. But I'm not so sure if he's going to be like one of the leading tacklers. But his size and strength and everything, he's definitely got a little bit of an edge to prove, I believe. And definitely stepping out of the shadows of his father by being drafted higher, of course. Being drafted in the top 10 and everything about that. So I think there's a lot of stuff to be out here. And it was just a lot of great stuff when you look at it. But for right now, let's go do it. Let's go draw a close to this edition of the Men of Steel podcast right now. And like I said, those are the main things that I'm those concerns right now. You definitely got, like I said, I'm going to put a re-rank in this order. I'm going to say Mike Hilton, who's definitely entering the last year of his contract, hoping to get an extension. I hope he gets signed a little bit more. A guy who went undrafted for this team. Then, of course, I would have to say the quarterback position, the backup behind Ben Roethlisberger, Josh Dobbs and Mason Rudolph. I'd probably say Josh Dobbs will edge it out by preseason, and we'll see how it goes. And I'll say at the latest, Mason Rudolph will probably be ready by 2020. And then, of course, you got Chris Boswell right now, who may not even make the team. That's a real thing to consider right there. So as people always want to jump at kickers or say the job is just hit the ball. Yeah, okay. But guess what? Those are the same guys that can make you or break you. And big 3 points. 3 points is still 3 points. Game of the line or game-tying field goal. All right, buddy. Well, like I said, that's going to draw to a close. Just want to say thank you once again for joining me here on this edition. As I always leave you, don't be trolling, be rolling. Here we go, Steelers. Here we go. I gone.